The great H.P. Lovecraft achieved early fame with his 1921 story, The Nameless City. It tells the story of Abdul Alhazarad, an Arab scholar whose quest for the secrets of black magic led him into a remote, forbidding area of the Sahara Desert. There he stumbled upon an ancient city unknown to the outside world, a center for sorcery and witchcraft, inhabited by djinni and afreets, the ghouls and demons of Semitic folklore. Passing through the dark streets and among the lofty columns of Iram, as the gloomy city was known to its residents, he entered the temple of their patron deity, Cthulhu, a satanic figure. The high priest in attendance entrusted him with the thaumaturgic tome, the Azif.But translating its horrific text into Latin as the Necronomicon proved too much for Abdul, and he went raving mad before completing his task. While most readers assume The Nameless City was an entirely original creation of Lovecraft's fertile imagination, he actually based it on ancient Arab oral accounts. Bedouin myth described Iram of the Pillars as a large, deeply prehistoric metropolis built after the Great Flood by a race of giants. The Ahad in an uninhabitable area of the Arabian Peninsula known as the Rubal Khali, or empty quarter. The city was said to have been a headquarter for the Mokaribun, ghost priest of the profane, pre-Islamic cult. They worshipped Cthulhu, mentioned as a devilish conception in the fragmentary Al-Qadif manuscript, which became the short story author's Al-Azif. Iram was also uncommonly rich, thanks in large measure to its trade in al-Lubana, the milk, an aromatic resin taken from the bark of Passolia trees for the production of costly perfume sought after the wealthy clients and used in secret rituals. Prized by the ancient Romans as olibanum for temple ceremonies, the substance was reintroduced sometime thereafter by the Franks, from which its modern name, Frankenstein, derived. From early medieval times, it was an integral part of Christian church services in large measure because al-Luban had always been associated with the banishment of evil influence. But its alleged purgative powers were inadequate to rid Iram of its Mokaribun, djinni and afreets, even after Hud, a virtuous prophet, had been sent by the god to convert the residents from their wicked ways. As a punishment, Allah afflicted them with a horrible drought, then caused a disastrous sandstorm to engulf the entire city. When the catastrophic whirlwind passed, the formerly splendid urban center had vanished without a trace beneath the sands of the empty quarter. The sinful city was supposed to have been swallowed whole by the desert. The Holy Quran mentions a certain city by the name of Iram, which was apparently not known in ancient history and non-existent as far as historians were concerned. Quran Al-Fajr, the Dawn, 89:6-13. Have you not considered how your Lord dealt with Ad, Iram, who had lofty pillars, the likes of whom had never been created in the land, and Thamud, who carved out the rocks in the valley, and Pharaoh, owner of the stakes, who oppressed within the lands and increased therein the corruption, so your Lord poured upon them a scourge of punishment. In 1968, however, the mist of the legend began to coalesce into archaeological reality when Paolo Mattiai and his colleagues from the University of Rome La Sapienza, digging at an unidentified site at Tel Madik in Syria, less than 35 miles southwest of Aleppo, excavated a statue dedicated to the Babylonian goddess Ishtar. The city was discovered to be 4,300 years old. Its base was inscribed with the words, Ibit-Lim, king of Abla, city that had vanished no less thoroughly than Iram. Abla, though, had been known to exist because it was occasionally cited by dynastic Egyptian and Akkadian bureaucrats. Abla was itself destroyed in 2240 BC when Saru-Kinu, Sargon of Akkad, overthrew Sumerian civilization. The city was thereafter reoccupied by a Semitic people, the Amorites, who restored enough former prosperity to make it the target of another conqueror, the Hittite king, Mursili I, in 1600 BC. His attack represented a death blow from which Abla never recovered, lingering on a small village until the 7th century AD when its ruins were finally abandoned and covered by the sands of time. But during exhaustive examination of the Talmudic tablets, archaeologists were surprised to find documentation of the legendary Iram, which the Albites clearly knew as a real place where they engaged in trade for many years. They referred to it as Eruma, the city of towers, which subsequent traditions gobbled as pillars. Eruma or Iram was actually a title bestowed on the city, just as New York is today known as the Big Apple or Chicago is called the Windy City. The lost city's real name was Ubar or Ubar of High Towers. The Ebla inscriptions also refer to Eruma Ubar as a cult capital where all the profane arts of black magic and thaumaturgy flourished, just as portrayed in Bedouin myth. In the early 1980s, a group of researchers interested in the history of Iram used NASA remote sensing satellites, ground-penetrating radar, Landsat program data and images taken from the Space Shuttle Challenger as well as spot data to identify old camel train routes and points where they converged. These roads were used as frankincense trade routes. Around 2800 BC to 100 BC, one area in the Dhofar province of Oman was identified as a possible location for an outpost of the lost civilization. A team including adventurer Ranulph Fiennes, archaeologist Juris Zarins, filmmaker Nicholas Clapp, and lawyer George Hedges scouted the area on several trips and stopped at a water well called Ashishar. Subsequent digs near the Ashishar oasis amid ruins previously identified as a 16th century Shishar's fort soon unearthed Iram Ubar. The excavated city showed every sign of fabulous wealth, resulting from extensive trade between the coastal regions and population centers of the Middle East, where it was a commercial center between Asia and Europe. Copious amounts of frankincense, the fragrant resin associated with the stories of Iram, were discovered at the site, the remnants of which likewise disclose the nature of its disappearance. This older fort was found to have been built on top of a large limestone cavern, which would have served as the water source for the fort, making it an important oasis on the trade route to Iram. As the residents of the fort consumed the water from underground, the water table fell, leaving the limestone roof and walls of the cavern dry. Without the support of the water, the cavern would have been in danger of collapse, and it seems to have done so sometime between 300 to 500 AD, destroying the oasis and covering over the water source. 4 subsequent excavations were conducted by Dr. Juris Zarins, tracing the historical presence by the people, the assumed ancestral builders of Iram. If, as Arabic myth relates, the Abdul Alhazarad built Iram 5 generations following the flood, that would place its construction around 2975 BC. Again, this date coincides remarkably well with the organic materials retrieved from Ubar, where carbon dating analysis established the city's completion shortly after the turn of the 3rd millennium BC. The Abdul Alhazarad builders were themselves described in Bedouin folklore as the tribe of the Afreets, remarkably skilled architects and builders who raised great stone monuments. Even today, rural Saudi Arabian tribes refer to any ancient ruins of prodigious size as buildings of the Afreets. The Afreets are regarded as the earliest inhabitants of Arabia and referred to as red men for the light color of their hair. Several accounts of Atlantis depict the Atlanteans, at least in part, as redheads. It would appear then that 5th-generation survivors from one of several natural catastrophes that devastated the kingdom of Atlantis 50 centuries ago built Iram Ubar in what is today the Dhofar province of southern Oman. It grew to become one of the history's longest-lived cities, flourishing for some 3,500 years until it stuffed a fatal disaster different from yet strangely parallel to the far more potent cataclysm that overwhelmed the Atlantis of its founding fathers' ancestors.
With so many conspiracy theories out there, it's hard to keep track of them all. Welcome to What We Know, where we try to uncover the histories and mysteries of the world by presenting all different theories out there, and the only narrative we push is this. Here's what we know, make up your own mind.
If you enjoy this video and want to see more like it, please consider subscribing to us and hitting the like button. Feel free to write a comment below and suggest which theory you want to see next. If you'd like to further support this channel, please consider joining. Our membership link will be found in the description box below. We appreciate your support, and as always, thanks for watching.